There's a powerful shift that happens when a woman stops asking, how do I get him to love me? And starts asking, what do I want to allow in my life? Because real strength isn't just about what you pursue. It's about what you refuse to tolerate. 1. Smart women don't tolerate emotional inconsistency. They don't cling to mixed signals, trying to decode silence or justify hot and cold affection. If someone makes them question their value one day and worship it the next, they don't romanticize that. They recognize inconsistency for what it really is. A lack of clarity, a lack of maturity, and most of all, a lack of respect. Then next, they disappear emotionally, become distant, and you're left replaying every interaction to figure out what went wrong. This roller coaster feels intense, even intoxicating, and it's often misread as chemistry. But it's not chemistry, it's confusion. And confusion is not a foundation for love, it's a trap. What makes emotional inconsistency so dangerous is how addictive it becomes. The brain starts to chase the high of emotional validation. The brain starts to chase the high of emotional validation. When someone pulls away, your anxiety spikes. And when they return with affection, relief floods in. That cycle, repeated enough times, starts to feel like love. But it's not love. It's survival. Your nervous system is just trying to find stability in chaos. Smart women recognize this. They step back and ask, is this excitement or is it anxiety? That distinction is everything. Consistent love doesn't give you whiplash. It doesn't leave you questioning your worth or decoding silence. When someone is emotionally consistent, you don't have to guess where you stand. You don't have to interpret mixed signals like they're puzzles to solve. You feel safe, seen, and stable. But emotional inconsistency disguises itself well. It comes cloaked in moments of charm, bursts of attention, grand apologies after distance. That unpredictability convinces you there's something special here, that it's just complicated, that maybe you're overthinking it. But the truth is, inconsistency keeps you hooked because you're constantly hoping the good version of them will show up and stay. The real danger lies in how this inconsistency begins to erode your self-trust. You start second-guessing your instincts, wondering if you're being too sensitive or needy. You convince yourself that if you just hold on a little longer, communicate better, or love harder, things will stabilize. But it's not your job to stabilize someone else's emotional availability. Healthy relationships are not built on your ability to tolerate confusion. They are built on clarity, honesty, and reliability. Emotional inconsistency is a sign of immaturity, unresolved wounds, or simply a lack of commitment. It's not your job to fix that. A smart woman doesn't make excuses for inconsistent behavior. She doesn't settle for occasional affection when she knows consistent respect is possible. She doesn't romanticize uncertainty. She seeks connection that is rooted in emotional maturity. There's a cultural myth that real love has to be dramatic, that it should include longing, jealousy, and the thrill of uncertainty. But that's not love. That's instability. Love, in its healthiest form, is steady. It feels like peace, not adrenaline. It holds you instead of confusing you. When someone is consistent, you don't have to chase them. You meet each other halfway, again and again. Choosing to walk away from emotional inconsistency isn't about being cold or unloving. It's about honoring your nervous system, your peace, and your self-worth. It's about saying, I deserve love that doesn't make me question myself every other day. It's about knowing that real chemistry doesn't confuse, it connects. It flows, it builds. The next time you feel drawn to someone who keeps you guessing, ask yourself, is this love or is this uncertainty dressed up in flattery? Smart women don't wait to find out. They recognize inconsistency as a pattern, not a phase, and they choose themselves before they choose confusion. Because at the end of the day, Love should never feel like something you're trying to survive. It should feel like something you can grow in. Something that adds to your life, not something that keeps you up at night. Disrespect is not always loud. It doesn't always show up as yelling or name-calling. Often it's subtle. The eye roll during a serious conversation. The joke at your expense in front of friends. The dismissive, you're overreacting when you express how you feel. But whether it's quiet or obvious, disrespect is the fastest way to erode a relationship. And smart women know this. They don't wait for it to escalate. They don't give it time to normalize. They recognize it as the deal breaker it truly is. When you allow even the smallest forms of disrespect, you teach the other person how to treat you. What starts as a joke can evolve into patterns. Interruptions when you speak, decisions made without your input, emotional distance when you set boundaries. Respect isn't just about how someone treats you when things are good. It's about how they respond when there's conflict, when they disagree with you, or when you need more. If someone can't respect you in those moments, their love isn't enough. Disrespect is the moment someone prioritizes their ego over your dignity. It's when your needs are met with annoyance instead of compassion. It's when your dreams are minimized, your voice silenced, your worth chipped away, sometimes so slowly you don't even realize it's happening. But over time, those small jabs leave scars. You start shrinking yourself to avoid tension. You stop sharing certain parts of yourself because you already know they'll be ignored or mocked. That's not love. That's emotional erosion. They don't tell themselves, he's just stressed, or maybe I am being too sensitive. They know that someone who truly respects you doesn't need you to be perfect to treat you with care. You don't have to earn kindness. It's a basic expectation, not a luxury. And when that expectation isn't met, they don't explain it away, they walk away. Respect in a relationship is about being seen, heard, and valued. It's the way someone holds space for your emotions, even when they don't understand them. It's about listening without defensiveness, communicating without control, and honoring each other's individuality. Without that, all the romance in the world means nothing. Flowers don't fix disrespect. Apologies without changed behavior are just rehearsed lines. One of the most dangerous things disrespect does is make you question your reality. You start to wonder if you're imagining things, if you're being too emotional, if you're the problem. But smart women stay grounded. They know their worth isn't up for negotiation. They trust their intuition. When something feels wrong, they don't gaslight themselves into staying silent. And here's the hard truth. You can love someone deeply and still have to leave them. So instead, if you are in doubt, you still find the strength and still sit with them. Love is not a reason to tolerate being diminished. A smart woman doesn't stay in a place that costs her self-respect. She knows that choosing herself is not selfish, it's necessary. Because the moment you tolerate disrespect is the moment you tell someone this is acceptable. But the moment you walk away from it, you say, I know who I am, and I won't be treated as anything less. At the heart of every healthy relationship is mutual respect. It's not optional. It's not earned by perfection. It's the standard. And once you raise that standard, once you realize that your peace is more important than someone's approval, you become untouchable. Not because you're hard, but because you finally learn to honor yourself in a world that often teaches women to settle. Respect is the non-negotiable. Without it, nothing works. With it, love becomes a safe place to land, not a battlefield to survive. The silent treatment is often mistaken for maturity, for space, for needing time to think. But when used as a pattern, as a weapon, or as a way to avoid accountability, it stops being a form of emotional regulation and becomes emotional manipulation. Silence in a relationship isn't always golden. Sometimes it's a punishment disguised as restraint, and smart women know the difference between healthy space and destructive avoidance. When someone gives you the silent treatment, they're not just being quiet. They're controlling the emotional atmosphere of the relationship. They withhold words, presence, and connection, forcing you to chase clarity. You start questioning what you did wrong, if you said too much, if you asked for too much, or if you should apologize just to break the tension. That's not communication. That's control. And it's one of the most subtle yet damaging ways someone can hold power in a relationship. Emotional intelligence isn't about shutting down. It's not about disappearing during conflict or avoiding emotional labor. True emotional intelligence means being able to sit in discomfort, to express anger or hurt without causing harm, to lean into conversations instead of running from them. Silence, when misused, is a way to protect the ego rather than repair the connection. It's the refusal to acknowledge your partner's emotions, not because you're overwhelmed, but because you want them to feel it. A smart woman doesn't misinterpret silence as strength. She doesn't chase someone who consistently retreats into emotional isolation. She understands that mature love requires dialogue, even when it's hard. She wants repair, not revenge. And she knows that disappearing when things get tough is not a trait of someone who's emotionally evolved. It's the behavior of someone emotionally unavailable. The silent treatment also creates emotional instability. You're never quite sure what will trigger the next round of silence, and that uncertainty makes you hypervigilant. You begin to shrink parts of yourself just to avoid another freeze-out. You silence your own truth to avoid theirs. That's not love. That's fear. And any relationship built on the fear of saying the wrong thing is already out of balance. What's even more insidious about the silent treatment is that it often gets romanticized. Phrases like, I just need space, or I don't want to say something I'll regret, can be valid, but not when they become excuses to avoid emotional responsibility altogether. Smart women can tell the difference. They value emotional maturity over performative calmness. They don't confuse distance with dignity. They want someone who can say, I'm upset, but I still care. Not someone who disappears until they feel in control again. It takes emotional courage to communicate through conflict. It's much easier to retreat into silence than it is to say, I'm hurt, I feel disrespected, or this conversation makes me uncomfortable, but I want to work through it. Silence is easier. But emotional intelligence isn't about what's easy, it's about what's healing. Smart women choose partners who can stay in the room when things get hard, who don't use silence as a shield or a sword, who understand that love isn't just about connection when things are smooth, it's about showing up when things are messy. They don't chase those who vanish behind silence. They protect their energy from emotional games that disguise themselves as boundaries. Because silence, when weaponized, isn't wisdom, it's avoidance. And avoidance is the opposite of intimacy. At the heart of a mature, lasting relationship is the ability to stay emotionally present, even when it's uncomfortable. Smart women know that love doesn't disappear when emotions run high. It speaks, it listens, it tries, and it never, ever punishes through silence. There's a false narrative that tells women being the constant giver in a relationship is a sign of strength, loyalty, or even nobility. That pouring endlessly, fixing, forgiving, showing up, no matter how little comes back, is a virtue. But the truth is, being the only giver isn't noble. It's exhausting. And over time, it breaks not only the relationship, but the woman carrying it. When you're the only one giving, emotionally, mentally, or physically, you begin to mistake effort for intimacy. Tell yourself that if you just give more time, more love, more patience, eventually they'll give back. You become the peacemaker, the forgiver, the one who tries harder after every argument, even when you weren't the one who caused it. You anticipate their needs, make excuses for their shortcomings, and lower your expectations just to keep things from falling apart. And in the process, you abandon yourself. Smart women come to understand that love is not meant to be one-sided. It's not supposed to feel like a constant uphill climb with no rest, no refill, no recognition. Giving in love is beautiful, but it must be mutual. When one person carries the emotional weight of two, resentment starts to grow. You stop feeling appreciated and start feeling used. What once felt like a gesture of love starts to feel like a survival tactic. And survival is not the same as connection. The trap is subtle. especially for women conditioned to be caregivers. You're praised for being understanding, for always being the strong one, for never giving up. But no one tells you that love should be a two-way flow, that giving without receiving isn't love. It's self-neglect. A relationship should not thrive at your expense. It should grow because both people water it. When one person is constantly depleted, the relationship may survive, but the individual does not. Being the only giver teaches you to celebrate breadcrumbs. You start to see the bare minimum as progress, a returned call, a half-hearted apology, a sudden burst of attention after weeks of withdrawal. You convince yourself that your loyalty is paying off, that they're finally learning, finally changing. But smart women know love shouldn't require you to suffer to earn it. Love isn't proven by how much you're willing to tolerate. It's revealed in how both people show up, consistently and wholeheartedly. Eventually, giving alone becomes your identity. You forget what it feels like to be on the receiving end of care. You stop asking for what you need because you've learned it rarely comes. But here's what's real. Being loved shouldn't feel like labor. You shouldn't have to work overtime just to feel seen. And when you realize this, everything changes. Smart women stop glorifying self-sacrifice. They stop celebrating relationships that only function when they overfunction. They start asking, who pours into me the way I pour into them? And they listen closely to the answer. Because mutual effort isn't a luxury, it's a requirement. Reciprocity is the language of healthy love. When both people are committed to giving, you don't just survive, you thrive. Walking away from one-sided love isn't a failure, it's a return to balance. It's a recognition that being drained in the name of love is not sustainable. You were never meant to be the only one carrying it. The most powerful thing you can do is stop watering relationships where you're the only source of nourishment. Love should feel like a partnership, not a performance. So, step into the role of the subservient and the performer. When both people give, love grows. When only one gives, love depletes. And smart women choose love that refills, not just requires. Because they know that real love doesn't exhaust you, it expands you. Control often wears a charming disguise. It comes wrapped in sweet words, concerned tones, and the illusion of protection. It sounds like, I'm just looking out for you, or I know what's best, or I'm only saying this because I care. But beneath the surface, it's not about love, it's about power. Smart women learn to spot the difference. Because control disguised as care is still control. And no amount of tenderness can mask the erosion of autonomy. At first it can feel comforting, someone wanting to know where you are, who you're with, what your plans are. It can be misread as attentiveness. It feels like someone is finally paying close attention, finally choosing you with intensity. But over time, the attention stops feeling like love and starts to feel like surveillance. You find yourself second-guessing your decisions, hesitating before sharing news or plans, or editing parts of your life to avoid confrontation. That's not care. That's subtle domination. Control wrapped in concern usually comes with guilt. It's not an outright demand. It's a suggestion laced with emotional consequence. Do you really think that's the best idea? Or I just don't like the way they influence you. Or if you cared about us, you'd consider how I feel. These aren't direct orders, but they lead you to question your own choices and eventually yield to theirs. And the worst part? You begin to internalize the belief that they know better, that their concern is wisdom, that your independence is recklessness. That is not a healthy relationship. It's a slow disempowerment. What makes this form of control so dangerous is how easily it's normalized. Especially for women, we're often taught to interpret restriction as affection, to believe that jealousy means you matter. That sacrifice proves love, that giving up your freedom is the price you pay for being someone's priority. But that's not love, that's possession. And smart women know the difference. True care empowers, not limits. It says, I trust your judgment, not let me decide for you. It supports your growth, even when that growth challenges their comfort. It welcomes your individuality instead of trying to reshape it. Love that's rooted in security doesn't need to monitor, correct, or hover. It creates room, not restriction. If someone says they care but constantly questions your instincts, pressures your decisions, or makes you feel like you owe them an explanation for simply being yourself, that is control. And smart women don't tolerate it. They understand that trust is not earned through obedience. It's built through mutual respect. They don't confuse intensity with intimacy or dominance with devotion. Control also isolates. Slowly, the person who cares starts influencing who you spend time with, how you spend your energy, even what goals you prioritize. It's not always direct. It's often subtle, emotional, and wrapped in phrases like, "I just worry about you," or "I think you're better off without them." But the effect is always the same. Your world shrinks. Your voice softens, your choices narrow. Smart women reclaim that space. They listen to their gut when something that sounds like love feels like pressure. They don't justify someone else's insecurity by sacrificing their autonomy. They know that real love doesn't need to control, it needs to understand. It doesn't demand silence, it invites truth. At its core, control disguised as care is manipulation. And no matter how softly it speaks, it aims to reshape you into someone more manageable, more agreeable, less free. But love, real love, wants you fully alive, fully expressed, fully sovereign. That's what smart women choose. Not care that cages, but care that champions. Not love that limits, but love that liberates. Because anything else, no matter how gentle it sounds, is not love at all. There is a deep, often unspoken pressure placed on women to be chosen, to be liked, wanted, desired, pursued. From fairy tales to dating culture, there's this constant messaging that says your value is confirmed when someone picks you, when you are no longer single, when you are finally claimed. But being chosen is not the goal. Being respected is. Because being chosen without respect is not a win. It's a slow surrender of your dignity, voice, and worth. When you focus only on being chosen, you begin to shape yourself around what others want. You shrink the parts of yourself that are too loud, too ambitious, too opinionated. You start performing instead of showing up honestly. You tolerate what makes you uncomfortable just to avoid seeming too much. But love that requires you to edit who you are is not love. It's approval seeking. And approval without respect is always temporary. Being chosen feels good in the moment. It satisfies that deep longing for connection, for affirmation. But if you're not being respected in the process, that choice becomes meaningless. You'll find yourself in relationships where you're loved for what you provide, not for who you are. Where your body is desired, but your boundaries are dismissed. Where your time is taken, but your needs are ignored. That's not partnership, that's possession. Respect is the real foundation. It's not as flashy as being chased or complimented or posted about on social media, but it's what sustains a relationship when the spark fades and the real work begins. Respect means your opinions are valued, your no is honored, your dreams are encouraged. It's the difference between being tolerated and being truly seen. A partner who respects you doesn't ask you to prove your worth. They already recognize it. They don't test your loyalty by withholding affection or playing games. They don't make you feel like love is a reward you earn through silence, sacrifice, or submission. Respect says, I don't just want you, I value you. I care about your experience, your growth, your peace. Smart women stop confusing attention with intention. They stop being impressed by bare minimums, the late-night texts, the breadcrumb affection, the sudden surge of interest after pulling away. They understand that being chosen by someone who doesn't show up with consistency, care, and character isn't a compliment. It's a red flag. Because anyone can choose you for convenience. But respect requires effort, maturity, and presence. The truth is, you don't need to be chosen to be worthy. You don't need a title, a ring, or validation from someone else to feel whole. Respect begins with the way you treat yourself. When you set boundaries, speak up, and stop begging for attention, you send a powerful message not just to others, but to yourself. I am enough without performance. I am enough without proving. And that's what changes everything. When you stop chasing being chosen, you start attracting people who see your strength, not just your softness, who admire your mind, not just your looks, who listen to your no as clearly as your yes. You move from desperation to discernment. You stop settling for crumbs and start expecting partnership. Being chosen might give you temporary validation, but being respected gives you lasting peace. Because in a relationship built on respect, you never have to fight to be heard. You never have to beg to be prioritized. You don't have to remind someone that you matter. They already act like you do. So don't just aim to be someone's choice. Aim to be someone's equal, someone's partner, someone's mirror for growth, not just a placeholder for comfort. That's what real love looks like. And it begins when you choose yourself, not because someone finally picked you, but because you finally stopped needing them to.